I'm gonna talk about Star Wars today, am I not? Okay, so Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. I mean, it's an insanely good Star Wars book. Honestly, probably the best one I've ever read that isn't maybe the Thrawn books, both in Legends and in canon, by Timothy Zahn. And it says a lot that this book is a new canon book. This book is not really the action focused thing that it usually is with Star Wars books. It's actually a romance book first, and then a Star Wars book, and then an action book, and everything else. And yet, it's such a good book. Ever since I read it, I mean, when I was reading it, I was gripped because you create two amazing characters who are sort of in the same planet, go to pilot school together, end up on different sides of the Rebel Imperial conflict. That's the bare bones of it, and that's as much as I will say in terms of the plot structure. But yeah, the romance is just so believable. The characters are so well developed. They have sort of realistic motivations. They have I mean, because we sort of saw them grow up and be friends together, it's just amazing, really. But at the same time, the most frustrating thing about this book is how it's so good, yet it doesn't stand alone without Star Wars. And part of it is because it's the structure of the book. The way the book is outlined and structured makes it depend upon Star Wars. That is unfortunate. And the reason why is simply because it's such a good story that I would want it to stand on its own as an independent romance story. And honestly, if you're not a fan of Star Wars, you're not going to like it. And the simple reason is because this is a retelling of the original trilogy at the end of the day through the eyes of two completely unknown characters to those who just watch the movies, but who are also living through the events of the original trilogy, very much going through the events of the movies, either before, after, or during, actually. So, I mean, it's kind of insane to think of because, first of all, I think as someone who is a big Star Wars fan and who likes Legends, who likes all the expanded universe and all the other media, that I don't want more original trilogy retold in the books necessarily. I want something in between, but I don't want the exact events. Even though it is interesting, even though there are some interesting tidbits of things that happen during the movies or right after certain events in the movies, I just really want something original, something different. I mean, the galaxy is so big, you can make up anything you want. You can make up any planet, any culture, and they do that. They start with making a planet that we don't know about, with a culture that's very interesting, with people that are struggling and that give the two people that we follow motivations. And yet the follow through is just more original trilogy things instead of showing us different facets of the Empire, different facets of the rebellion, different planets, etc. So it just feels like a little bit of wasted potential there, but also it feels like a little bit of telling us things we already know mixed in with the fact that it's just inaccessible to then someone who doesn't like Star Wars but maybe likes sci-fi, is open to sci-fi. So I think that's the most frustrating part about this book. I do think Claudia Gray wrote the characters amazingly, truly amazingly, but I just question how much it had to be beholden to the original trilogy because it's still just such a great piece of literature. Honestly, I can't stress it. It even has a spicy scene. I mean, that's, I guess, because of Andor. That's not necessarily unheard of in the Star Wars universe, but still, I mean, it's really fun to see something that takes its liberties like that, and yet it can't take its liberties with the whole events because it just has to follow the movies, and that may be a larger problem of the canon post Disney acquisition, but the thing is, I really want this book to be appreciated because a lot of people, when talking about Star Wars books, I mean, they talk about the X-Wing books, the Bane trilogy, they talk about, in Legends, the New Jedi Order, for example, they talk about some comics. In the new canon, they talk maybe about Alphabet Squadron, but this book is so good. I mean, I'm not a huge romance reader for the most part. I do like romantasy as any person on the internet nowadays, but this book, which is more romance focused and then secondarily maybe a little bit of sci-fi and a little bit of action, but not that much, amazing. I mean, I couldn't stop turning the pages. I really couldn't. It's technically a YA book. I think that's probably appropriate, but yeah, I mean, seriously, this is the best book in the Disney canon at the very least, in my opinion, and maybe the Alphabet Squadron coming in close. But yeah, I mean, it shows also some of the problems with the canon. And I do think it's worthwhile knowing that Claudia Gray really loves the source material. I mean, she is faithful to it. She is respectful of it, of course. She's not retconning anything, changing any canon. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be shown such cool things that the Star Wars galaxy has to offer, you know? When you can literally kind of make up anything in this whole wide galaxy of trillions, you know? Quadrillions, maybe. Who knows? So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a ramble review at this point, and the reason why is just because I really like this book so much, and I wish more people would enjoy it. If you like Star Wars, I mean, read it. Basically, read it. I can't recommend it more, especially if you happen to like Star Wars and romance. If you don't, that's where you just have to decide how much would I care to hear a retelling of the original trilogy for a really good romance story, and if I do care about it, then maybe skip it, or maybe just, you know, read a little bit, see if you can find a preview on Kindle, for example, and then read a little bit of it, and then decide from there. But yeah, I mean, it's just, but yeah, I do think Lost Stars is an amazing piece of media that's just not talked about enough in this storm of kind of mediocre TV shows and all these Legends books that are still read a lot and appreciated for good reason. But don't sleep on this, okay? Don't sleep on this book, because you won't regret it, especially if you're a Star Wars fan, okay? That's it. Thank you for watching. If you want more content on books, please subscribe.